So I had a couple of days to go out to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and do a little bit of fishing. My original plan was to go offshore and see if I could find some Spanish, but despite the low winds, the surf was surprisingly big, so I decided to stay inshore and look for the trout and the redfish. Generally speaking, I start off looking for fish that are pushing up into the grassy areas. I did not see a whole lot of action through there. Saw a few small trout. That was about it. So I decided to scout a little bit more. Work some of the channels coming out of the grassy areas. Picked up a couple of fish here and there, nothing really remarkable. So I finally decided to push out back into the flats, and I wasn't disappointed. Could see a couple of fish rolling right off of a little drop off that goes into the channel, and on the second cast with a little white paddle tail, ended up hooking up with a nice red. I had hooked this fish before I staked out the boat, and so he started to pull me into the school, so I had to put the rod in the rod holder and paddle backwards a little bit to keep from getting pulled into the school, so he wouldn't spook all the other fish. They just fight so hard. They're so much fun. And here in North Carolina, you can only keep one fish. And since I was camping out, whenever I camp out, I pretty much make the decision that what I eat is going to be what I catch. So I usually try to get a fairly decent sized redfish, because that'll be both my lunch, dinner, and usually breakfast for that next morning. I'll do a little sashimi, or sometimes I'll just pan fry half of a fillet in some butter and some garlic, a little salt and pepper, and man, I'm perfectly fine with that. I really don't need much else. Obviously, these fish aren't the really big reds that you can get whenever they're spawning, but they're still just always fun. They're just so powerful. They readily take so many different types of lures or flies. They're usually pretty predictable. North Carolina does have a lot of hurricanes that come through here, and they change a lot of the channels and things like that, but generally speaking, they're still going to be for the most part, in the same areas. Since these fish were feeding consistently, I decided to pull out the fly rod and test a few flies that I had tied the night before. Right off the bat, like first cast, hooked into this really nice fish. He was just giving it what for, man. I had this fish on a pretty stout 8-weight fly rod, and I think I was using maybe, it was either 12 or 15 pound test tippet, and he was still just absolutely wearing it out. Almost every single one of these fish that I hooked, they would make a hard run for the deep water. They would make a run for the channel. That's the way that they came in to this inlet, and that's the way that they know to go out, and that's kind of their security, is to head back into the deep water whenever they get spooked or get hooked. That's pretty, and of course that's pretty common with most fish, especially it seems like the larger the fish, the faster they're going to head to deeper water. But I was actually glad that I had the 8-weight. Sometimes I'll use a 6-weight out here. If I'm in the grassy marsh areas, I'll usually use a 6 weight, but if I have an opportunity to catch a little bit larger fish, sometimes I'll step up into an 8 weight whenever there's heavy current in there, because I know that they're going to run into the current, and fighting the fish is one thing, but fighting the fish that's kind of bulldogging down into the current, it's a different ball game. So you do need a little bit more backbone. I don't want to have the fish basically killing itself because I'm using too light of gear, because these fish will fight to the point to where they will die even if you try to revive them. So you do need to kind of get them in reasonably fast as possible. I'd already put one fish in the box, so it was just all fishing for fun at this point. That's a good eater size right there. Nice healthy fish. The fish are looking pretty healthy this year, despite the water quality has not been good at all, unfortunately. I kind of hate to film on these days that are just so, cloudy or overcast. They just make everything kind of look gray and dull, but I tell you, it sure is good for the fishing. I had a great uncle that he used to, he was just an absolute master fisherman, especially fly fisherman, and one of the things he used to say is, well, if you didn't have eyelids, you wouldn't want to be out on a really sunny day either, especially looking up in the water. And there's so much truth to that. I've noticed that fish that are feeding on the surface, especially in freshwater, the brighter the sunnier it is, usually they're not going to be quite as eager to come up to the surface for a fly. Salt water doesn't seem to be quite like that, but it definitely does hold true to a degree. I'm only showing just a few fish that I caught here. This was only I don't know, maybe 30 minutes of fishing right here on this particular flat, but I probably caught maybe 10 to 12 fish sitting in this one spot. I caught several on the spinning rod. I caught several on the fly rod, and I was just trying to see, exactly what they were keying in on, and I caught fish on everything. From like a white paddle tail to a shrimp imitation to a chunked up mullet, like little mullet pieces to live mullet. They were just pounding everything. So decided to head back to the campground and fix some fillets and just have a nice meal at the campsite and just take it all in. For me, that's partly what makes a good camping and fishing experience, is at the end of the day really enjoying a nice, just absolutely as fresh as it can be meal of something that you've put in some work and some effort to acquire. It's nice to be able to just kick back at the campsite and reflect back on what it took to find and acquire those fish, and on a good day of fishing. Just being out just in nature obviously is a big part of it, and just having the appreciation of how it all comes together. You love it when a plan comes together, and it's just nothing like it.